I went through the same thought process. How can I follow somebody that I thought could be a pedophile? You know?
Right.
Mm-hmm. The culture that doesn't understand age, or that
Yes,
doesn't get.
yes.
وإن كان ذو عسرة فنظرة إلى ميسرة وأن تصدقوا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون.
So tell me something juicy. What were some of the most common misconceptions prisoners have about Islam, or new Muslims have about Islam? The raw truth. Don't hold back.
Yeah, so I was really caught off guard because I was not expecting to go in there and start talking on some of the big topics, right? Like the age of Aisha,
so what are some of the rebuttals? You tell me, because I had to convince myself. I went through the same thought process. How can I follow somebody that I thought could be a pedophile? You know?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so for me personally, that is really outside of my comfort zone. Like,
okay, I'll tell you what I need to. I have
okay,
some thoughts.
you go.
All right, excellent. So how I justify this, right? So I think the legal marriage age just in America, about 100 years ago, was 14 in some states. Legal consensual marriage state, right? Age, sorry. So marriage is not really just about love. It's been about survival, finances, helping families grow, right? And so we can study the Virgin Mary, Mother of Jesus. Okay, she had Jesus at 14. About, okay, she was supposed to marry Joseph that was about 80 or so, right? So these huge age differences.
Wait, what?
I
really?
I think so. He was very old, wasn't he? Do you know that? Was it about 80?
I didn't know. This is just news to me. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then Mary was actually a single mother because I think Joseph had a child from a previous marriage, and then she had Jesus. So she, when Joseph passed away, she was responsible for two of them. But yeah, isn't that interesting? So not only she was also a single mother. We can also learn that from our Mother Mary. What do you see?
Yeah, I don't mean to cut you short. Yeah, Mary was 12 years old when she married Joseph at 90, according
90.
to the earliest Christian manuscripts. And in Jewish biblical law, when a woman was allowed to marry according to the Jewish biblical law, she was 3 years old. At 3 years old.
Oh wow!
Yes.
Also, Isaac, according to the Bible, was 40 years old when he married 3 years old Rebecca. And now in 1885 in Delaware, the legal age for women was married was 7 years old. In 1885, this is recent.
Oh, this is not even 100.
I just had a class last week at the county jail, and there was a Nigerian brother there, and he said, right now in 2025, the legal age of getting married was 14.
Where? In Delaware?
In Nigeria.
In Nigeria.
In his country, like his places
even
in
the globe, currently practicing governments are allowing these ages. And then I bring up Mary.
I'm sorry to cut you off. One of the major reasons why is because we are holding our standards based on other people's standards based on ours. And other places in the world, the lifespan of living is only 35 years old. According to what I learned, so we have to consider that back then, like you said, it was about surviving. It was about different aspects that we don't see it now because we live in a society where we have all these benefits right now, and some of these benefits, it didn't exist back then, And number one is because Allah commanded it. This is a commandment from Allah, and these prophets, we understand that they are not allowed to disobey Allah's commandments. Allah is the most wise.
He was ordered, right? Prophet Muhammad was ordered to marry Aisha.
Just like Abraham was ordered, alayhi salam, was ordered to kill his own son.
Mm-hmm.
Right? These are things that sometimes in the eyes of mankind we won't
Ew.
understand.
I
But
think
these are
that's the biggest reason, just like what he said, is that this wasn't something that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam just said, "Oh, I see that girl and I want to marry her." It was a command from God through his dreams, and then
right.
also the I was listening to a lecture by Sheikh Omar Suleiman about the life of Aisha radiallahu anha, and he said
Mm-hmm.
that she
Mm-hmm.
was actually arranged through a matchmaker. Like the Prophet ﷺ never like just directly asked, like the matchmaker said, "Hey, you should marry her." And then when they presented, I guess the matchmaker asked Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq if he would do it. He said she's already engaged. She had been engaged for multiple years already. And
Mm-hmm.
so then by that, so then Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq went to talk to the family who was engaged, and they said, "Oh, you're Muslim. We don't want to have you guys corrupt our son." So they were the ones who broke the engagement, and then Hazrat Abu Bakr got excited and came back, and that's how the engagement happened. But it was like a command, and then also
Yeah,
if you look at the writings of the time and the time period, yeah, like back then, average life expectancy was around 40.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the people nobody was saying, "Oh, look at you, you're marrying a young girl." They had every reason that they're trying to attack the name and reputation of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was never ever a critique. That was simply so part of the culture.
that's
And
right.
I think like personally, I think that because we're supposed to honor our word and be like good citizens, that when we're in a community, it's not like, oh, you get to break all their laws. Typically, when you go to a different culture or community as a Muslim, you need to obey their laws. They're not going to be like, you can't pray. They're not going to be like, you have to kill people. I mean, there's the God's laws. And then on top of that, now you have an additional set of restrictions, right? So I think that if you go into a culture where it's now illegal, then you should not break those laws as a Muslim because you're making Islam look bad, that you don't respect their laws, which are simply more stringent. Like that's why it really does bother me when Muslim men come over to America and then they're like, "Oh, I can have a second wife." And it's like, "No, you're living in America." So then they get
It's
married a second
not
time,
legal.
get
Mm-hmm.
exposed, and now like it just looks terrible. I'm like, why did you, when you were coming over to America, sign a document saying you're going to be a good citizen, come here, intentionally go through and break this and create this huge bad image of Islam? Same
Mm-hmm.
thing, like if they were to try to do that with a young girl over here, it would make Islam look so bad. And they say, "I'm not going to do it." Like you have to follow the law. So I think that the way that it works is Allah has his laws, and then it's nice because it adapts to the times and cultures. Because there's even like communities that they don't even know what age they are. Like there's I saw this documentary about these islanders, this like kind of like different like community that's not really part of the modern world, and they don't have a name for like tomorrow. They don't
Yeah.
have hours. They
Oh,
don't have
look at that. Their
midnight. One of
perception of
them,
time.
they were like a seafaring people living in an island, and they were talking about how they don't have words for tomorrow or even yesterday. So like definitely not 5 minutes, one
Their
hour.
sense of time, huh?
Yes, they just didn't have like years. They just kind of were like, I was born. If you asked what age they were, they didn't have an answer. They
I
didn't
love
know
it.
themselves. Like nobody knew how old the other person was. They were just a tribe. Like, oh, that's my mom, that's my neighbor, whatever.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and so they didn't have their own marker would be menstruation,
Uh-huh.
puberty.
The
Like
monthly.
that's just their
Okay.
marker,
Uh-huh.
right? And so and that's not a like I was just like, how would I go and
What
say
is
you need
important,
to
really?
be 18 years old before
Uh-huh.
you get married?
Uh-huh.
Like, how would I go and impose my value on this people who don't know how old they are?
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
why
Puberty.
the
Yeah, we bleed. Uh-huh. Then we know,
right. So the
we're of
American
age. Yeah.
and yeah, and like especially if maybe that culture only lives to 40,
Uh-huh.
like maybe they want to be a grandmother. Maybe you know what I'm saying. So and in their culture, they don't have all these things like education that lasts 25 years because that's just so so when you try to impose your American standard on everybody all the time, then there's an issue. But
Right.
it's better when God has a standard that can be imposed on everybody all the time. And then on top of that,
Divine
whatever
decree.
culture you go into, now you have to follow their rules.
Mhm.
So to me, I think that is one of the most brilliant things that God could ever do is have these are all my rules that you have to follow all the time, no matter where you're at. But
divine
then when
decree.
you go to a
Mhm.
different culture, another country or whatever,
Their
you
governance
follow their
works.
laws on top of this.
Exactly. I think I as a Bengali, I see Bengali Americans go to Bangladesh and they're so judgmental. And I'm like, hey, look, the public in Bangladesh, they are so helpful. If something happens like that in America, you think anybody, like 20 people are going to stop and help you? No.
Mhm.
So the chaos, the wires, like you look up and you cannot see the sky because there's so many wires, right? But they need it. How else are they going to have the electricity they need and whatnot, right? So
Right.
based on their population growth, based on the roads that they built, God
Right.
knows how many years ago, they're still
Right.
living.
Right.
There's parts of the cars will not go. So we cannot base people's living conditions from what we are familiar with. It's
Yeah.
just it's working for them.
Yeah.
And who are we to judge?
And one of the best arguments I think Brother Yusuf made mention was that the laws of the Jewish people, this to me, when I first found out, I was just like, what is wrong with God again? Because I was like, the Jews themselves, like there was a town that they had to go and I don't know, destroy. For some reason, they said kill everybody, even all females above the age of 3. And the logic was that 3 is the age of marriage. Now, first off, I don't know why they were killing everybody, but also 3 being like there were so many things wrong to me.
I don't
in
think that was
statement.
the original revelation that
Yeah, okay, so don't
Moses
quote me on
received.
that.
Yeah,
But okay, let's just say that at that time 3 was the age of like marriage. I don't know about consummation.
I believe it. I mean, people to this day pimp their daughters and their wives. You know what I'm saying? At 2025, so it might not be legal, but I see it in America with non-Muslims all the time.
To me, that was crazy. I was like, 3 years old. This is the law. Like this is allowable, and it just blew my mind. So for that to be the standard, and then now God commanded that it changed to a lower age, like a higher age of that. To me, I thought, okay, it's slightly better, but to me, it's still cringe. Like I'll be honest, this is something that was weird to me, but I'm not going to project my standards that I've grown up with on everybody of all time in the past, and God commanded it, or maybe that tribe over there that doesn't have time. I can't, like, that to me is like judgmental that does make sense. So
Sister Layla, tell me, did you go to middle school in America?
I did.
Okay, what city?
Houston.
Okay, and Brother Yusuf, what city did you go to? Did you go to middle school in America?
Yeah, everything was in New York.
Okay, in New York. Okay, now me too. Houston, Texas, middle school. Okay, at middle school, I think what is the average age of a middle schooler? What's a 6th grader and an 8th grader's age? 11, 12, I'd say.
12,
13,
like
12, 13, yeah.
11 to 13.
All right. I was in middle school not that long ago. Okay. So I was in middle school and I knew girls that were sexually active. I believe that Jesus was a miraculous birth, right? I believe that Mary was a virgin. But I also understand that there are different sexual natures of people, And so I know that there were sexually active people in middle school. Okay. Very young people. Okay. Again, this is not 100 years ago. I was only in middle school, say about 15 years ago. You know what I'm saying? A little bit more than that, So again, to deny people, I'm not saying American 11, 12-year-olds are mature enough to get married or have sex. I believe the current age is appropriate, to buy condoms.
We're supposed to live by the laws of the land.
To a degree, our government puts in a lot of thought. So many specialists make these decisions that help create a system of law and regulation. So, by any means, I am not arguing that we should make it easy for people to have sex. I am a strong believer of avoiding sex before marriage. Premarital sex is haram. It is a sin. It can be so confusing. It takes such a toll on people, whether they realize it or not. And relationships do not have to be physical. I have seen people waste years and years of their lives emotionally invested through these calls and text messages. Be mindful of who you speak to. I believe that people should not be having sex without marriage, period. Premarital sex is not recommended. So much of an emotional toll, so much disease to go around. I think people need to be very cautious. But at the same time, I think that we have a culture that is really fascinated by delaying marriage. And I think it's important for people to be able to channel their sexual energies into healthy releases, So because we cannot get physical with everybody, when we are able to get physical, it should be with special people. And so I think this goes into play with how we are able to learn how to self-regulate. Make sure you are limiting your exposure, lowering your gaze, being around people that are modest in the way they speak, the way they behave, and their actions. Safeguard yourself. Try not to be around bad influences. Be around Lord-fearing and Lord-loving folks. It's important to be mindful about how people trigger you, what they project onto you. If there are feelings we cannot discuss, draw about it, write about it, talk to people that you feel safe, that will be able to help you with this personal matter. Go outside the family. Find a stranger that you can speak to about, maybe a professional that will not remind you in your personal life. You can just have the conversation and then leave it there. Avoid sharing details with people that are just not going to let you forget or edit it out. That may even make the situation worse. Find an imam, please. There are so many ustadas. There are people at your local masjid. Find a mosque to go to. If everybody knows you at home base, travel outside. There are online scholars. There are many trained, religious, pious people that will help you with your sexual urges. Please seek out help and guidance. There are lots of ways that we can learn about sex, control our urges, still live according to the laws of the land, and still be healthy. I think another thing that I would like to advocate for right now is early marriage. You know, I've seen many drawbacks of delaying marriage, and there's nothing wrong with consensual sex, with people that love each other, that want to grow together in a halal way. Now, with all that being said, if you are not in a position to get married, start fasting. Watch your exposure again to what you see, what you hear. If you are tired and hungry, you really will not entertain thoughts that you cannot afford, okay? So please guard yourself and start fasting regularly throughout the month, throughout the week. And it's very important for people to have multiple focuses. Be sure that you're not obsessing and just fantasizing about getting with someone. Be sure that you are empowering yourself, educating yourself developing your spiritual, financial assets, your emotional health, and your mentality. Work on your body, be physically active. There's a lot more to life than hooking up and being with people. Dare I say that this culture of meaningless sex is creating a huge void emotionally in people's hearts and their ability to communicate and express themselves long term. Ladies, stop getting used. Don't let them imprint you. Don't fall for those words without actions. And brothers, you are at risk. There's this culture of rape allegations, and without marriage, you are unsafe having premarital sex. The SalaamReEntry family prays that this programming entertains you, educates you, and we hope you are intrigued to better practice Islam. Our mission at Salaam Reentry Program is to serve our Creator while uniting to make the world a better place, starting with convicts. Join our cause and donate at SalaamReEntry.org. Please volunteer as soon as possible and be generous. If I were to make a distinction between grooming and pedophilia, one is to take care of, one is to maintain, one is to build trust, right? When you see your barber, you trust them to follow through and groom you, okay? You understand that man is working with a blade, and you surrender because you want the benefits of the haircut. However, a pedophile is manipulative, is deceiving, is secretive. It's a whole different concept. For example, I watched a documentary about a person in the Philippines. She could not afford, or maybe they don't have access to abortions. She had yet another child. She is barely feeding herself. She goes through trash for a living, and she decided to sell her baby on the black market. She is praying that she does not sell her baby to a person that will traffic her unborn child for sex or organs. She is hoping that her child doesn't have to go into child labor. The best case scenario, she finds a lovely couple that wants to raise a baby, and her baby finds a nice home where they have the chance to get educated and live in better conditions. And another way to make sure your child is taken care of, in Bangladesh, I have noticed that they use the term Bopala. And at first I thought that was so unusual, but it is, in fact, an adoption when you are a Muslim man signing up to care for, provide, protect, and maintain a woman. And in the cases of child marriages, a potential woman. Now, hear me out. Another scenario is my great grandmother. She decided to marry her daughter off to her nephew. The reasoning behind this was because when daughters got married, oftentimes parents would never see them again. So at that time, she told her 20-some-year-old nephew that he was going to marry his baby cousin. And by the time my grandmother was about 6 years old, she was raised by her future husband. He would brush her hair, get her ready for school, scold her, and whatnot. And I think this went on for a few years until she was finally old enough to consummate the marriage. Now, when I hear my aunts and uncles talk about my great grandmother and the decision to get their parents married, it seems like they had an excellent marriage. Although they were cousins, they got along, they respected each other. I heard that my grandmother said her husband was so shy, a very simple man, and that she absolutely adored her husband, even though he was a good 20, 30 years older than her. This child marriage was an attempt by my great-grandmother to keep her family united. Back in the day, transportation was not as accessible. Even now, this year, I heard a story of a woman in Bangladesh that lives in a village that is only about 30 minutes away from her brothers, but because she does not have money, she has not been able to see her cancer-stricken, dying brother for over 5 years. And it only cost maybe about $5 or $10 American to go see him. Unfortunately, this is not an option for low-income villagers. We have become so comfortable with our lifestyle that it's hard to imagine that there are people around the world that have such different living conditions. I mean, we're talking about affording a 20-minute ride on a bus or personal car. Regardless, I'm going to mention one more scenario and drop the mic after this one because it's getting really hard to talk about this topic. But imagine this, in a situation where you as an adult have experienced life as it is now, go through some type of catastrophic disaster, maybe some type of flooding, along with some type of volcanic activity that wiped up all of civilization and people and even land, in which only you and a child survives, and somehow y'all end up on some type of gorgeous island. There's ample fruits and vegetables, a lot of food, fresh fish, great temperatures. Y'all can live there for years and years and years. And this child is now a mature adult. But of course, they've never experienced society or a community. They don't know how other people interact with one another in group situations. But you do, because maybe you have 20, 30 years of experience living before the tragedy of losing population, right? And so now that there are two adults of the opposite gender that have no known blood relations, would it be appropriate for you to choose to teach the art of procreation for God's sake? Of course, you don't have to populate the world, but would you? With this one that you groomed, raised, and adopted, someone that you were a teacher to and or a guardian of, not necessarily a parental figure, would you deprive yourself from God's blessings because of what people think, what people would have thought? Would you dwell in shame and embarrassment for having sexual urges, which are very natural, just because of an age gap? Would you discriminate on someone because they are too old or too young? Although y'all are both grown and in consent, would you allow the devil to whisper doubts and diminish creativity, limit expansion, and inspire doubt? This is something I like to remind people all the time, that we don't have to make contact to have sexual attraction. This is something I like to address when I mention that I don't touch men's hands when they try to shake my hand. I don't need a man to validate me by shaking my hand. I also don't need to give that contact comfort to him. And I definitely do not appreciate some woman reaching for my man, and the idea of my man trying to physically comfort any other woman that is not halal for him would not sit well with me. Even a blind man is attracted to the way a woman smells, the way she sounds. So let's be honest. Let's learn how to tame our desires. A believing woman once expressed her concern or dismay about the Quran not explicitly mentioning an age for consensual sex. So the last portion of this segment was meant to dive into the concept of why in densely populated areas We do need governance and regulation. However, in secluded areas, there may be some exceptions, and the Quran covers it all. No harm, no foul.
وإن كان ذو عسرة فنظرة إلى ميسرة وأن تصدقوا خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون.